My dad and I both conceptually were like, yeah, this should work. There's no reason we can't make it work. But if I was to go back into full tillage, I would have to spend more money on equipment. I'd have to hire more people. We don't use tillage equipment that often, so why spend the money on it? I've gotten to the point where I'm like, if I'm going in the field and I'm doing tillage, I want to make sure that tillage equipment is tuned up right. It is doing the best job it can possibly do.
Hello and welcome to Winning with No-Tills, part of the Crop Chat series that will be on Field Crop News. And today we're in Cobourg, Ontario at the farm of Mark Burnham, Burnham Farms here in Cobourg, where Mark is a 7th generation farmer here in the area, primarily grains, but I'm going to have him talk about the operation as a whole as we go forward. So Mark, maybe just talk a little bit about who's currently involved in the farm as a whole and the layout, the setup of the farm.
Yeah, so our farm recently went through we're going through a transition phase from one generation to the next, and we split up the cash cropping and our horticulture farm market businesses. So I'm on the cash cropping side with one full-time employee and my dad's part-time. And then our horticulture and farm market is, it's got my two younger sisters and both my parents involved. And then we also have, my older sister also has a horse barn on the farm as well.
And can you talk about the sort of journey to where you are today with your no-till?
Yes, so when Dad came back from Guelph in the early 80s, late 70s, I can't remember. He started no-tilling then. He was one of the first people in the area to no-till, and he's also one of the first ones to start growing soybeans.
Okay. And you didn't go through with a strip till phase and on that journey, you went straight to the no-till?
Yeah, we were kind of minimum till. We were just, after the wheat, we would do a light disc in the fall and another light disc in the spring, and then we'd plant into that. But yeah, we just kind of did a simple transition from that into no-tilling corn.
And can we talk about the soil types and the slopes that you deal with?
Yeah, so soil types were silty loam, mostly. We've got some sandy loam up north with a few pockets of other types. We've got a little bit of muck, or like maybe an acre or two of muck, and slopes were anything from mostly flat, like a 1 or 2% slopes, to some very large rolling, fairly steep hills. We've got one field where we've got over 160 feet of elevation change, and we go up and down the hill like it's up and down in one pass. So it's a lot of elevation change.
And it's interesting that this is after soybean harvest, but there's still quite a lot of corn stalks, and they don't seem to cause you any problem.
As long as you have a drill with enough downforce and sharp enough blades, residue management usually isn't an issue, unless you get into super soft, damp soils where it just hairpins no matter what.
Understood.
Or if it's too dry, we've had it sometimes where it's too dry and there's no soil structure because it's too dry even.
Okay.
But generally it's pretty easy. And I'll correct you, that's azuki stubble, not soybean stubble.
Sorry, that's right, Mark. I forgot. I haven't got to that question yet. This picture just sort of highlights how big some of your fields are around here that you farm. Any idea how many acres that field is itself?
That field is a little over 220 acres. So we farm just shy of 2,000 acres. We've got 3 fields that are over 200 acres. One field that includes the one field that's over 300 acres.
Wow, okay. And so maybe just talk about the crops and what your rotation is that fits the system for you.
Yep. Yeah, so we're mostly a corn, azuki, wheat rotation. We do have some untilled fields. It might total 150 to maybe 200 acres, where it basically just flip-flops back from corn to azuki beans. But that's our general rotation. So it's, yeah, corn, azukis, winter wheat.
And all 3 of those no-tilled.
All 3 of those no-till, and we follow up the wheat generally with a cover crop if we can make it work.
So in talking to people as part of the Winning with No-Till series, lots of them sort of have a philosophy of why they're into no-till, other than just the specifics of cost and stuff like that. Is there a general reason why Burnham Farms has migrated to the no-till?
I think the main reason was labor issues, just reducing reducing the labor associated with tillage. And in our rolling terrain, we also typically had a lot of erosion issues. So by going to no-till, we kind of solved both those issues. And then, yeah, lately we've been noticing that soil health benefit as well.
And in terms of some of those complex topographies that you have in those fields, did you have grass waterways at one time?
Yes, and we still do have some grass waterways. We never had waterways, I guess, when we first started,
Okay,
probably because we didn't know much about them or how to manage them. So that's been a bit of a learning curve too, is how to manage a waterway properly. And
gotcha.
it's not just a seed it and forget it. It's when you go to install it, it needs to be installed properly, seed it, and then farming it properly too, like making sure you're not actually putting a headland around it to, because then the water's just going to go into those headlands and then wash down the headlands. So you actually have to have you basically plant right through the waterways.
And in your no-till system, have you been able to take some of those grass waterways out because the system allows faster infiltration and such?
Yep, absolutely. We have taken out, we generally don't take out a whole waterway. We'll just kind of keep reducing it.
Okay,
Um, and just have portions of waterways where it's steeper or where you know you're going to get that velocity of the water or the volume of water where it will wash.
okay.
But yeah, if it's flat, we're typically farming across the waterway, not along it. So um, the residue usually is enough to stop any erosion.
Okay. And can you talk a little bit about the mindset that it takes to be a no-tiller? So many people have just fear of it, of going down that road. What gave you the confidence? Like, what's the makeup of Mark Burnham that lets him go down these roads?
It's, I guess, something that I've always known. Dad's been no-tilling as long as I've been alive to some degree. So it's always a system that I've seen work. And I mean, I have some situations where it doesn't work.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, your number one mental uh, skill or whatever attribute has to be patience. Waiting for that soil to dry, whether it's for planting or harvesting or spraying, like you just got to make sure that you try and manage the soil as best you can, same as the crop, so that you don't have to go in and do corrective tillage if you don't have to.
And I know you're growing cover crops. Why you're growing cover crops, and did the system, the no-till system, start with cover crops, or is that something that's come in more recently?
It's definitely a more recent adventure. So yeah, we haven't been like I said before. We didn't jump into no-till right away. It took us 20 years to get it to full no-till. But since then, we've been no-tilling, full no-till for 20 years after that. Um, and we've probably been cover cropping for maybe, I'm going to call it good 15 years anyways. Um, and the main purpose for that was we were still getting enough erosion on those wheat stubble fields and some other fields over the winters where in the spring you'd get that thaw just in the top few inches, then you'd get a massive downpour, and then all of a sudden you get this sheet erosion. Um, so we saw the cover crops as a way to try and mitigate that and reduce the repair tillage that we would have to do.
And what's your sort of standard recipe today for cover crops?
So yeah, it's changed over the years. We used to be bigger believers in the annual ryegrass and the cereal rye. We've gone away from both of those species. Our
Totally?
totally.
Okay.
Uh, we are our main species is oats, and then after that, like this year, we're oats, turnip, sunflowers. I want to say there's another one, but I can't remember right now. Oh, winter peas.
And where in the system do you have cover crops?
Currently, it's only after wheat, but I would like to get to the point where if the bean field's not going into wheat, then I at least throw like some bin run wheat down on the field just to try and get that extra little bit of root growth, that extra, yeah, it's almost like a separate cropping system in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what percentage of your soybean ground does go to wheat? And or sorry, soybean or edible bean ground goes to winter wheat.
Yeah. Typically we're shooting for 30%, because we have those few acres that just aren't suitable for wheat. Just they're untiled, they're flat, they pond, so we tend to get a lot of winter kill. So we just avoid the wheat on those fields.
Now today is the 27th of August, and you haven't put your cover crops in. What's your traditional timing for putting your covers in, and why?
Yeah, we're usually 7 to 10 days after we finish wheat harvest. Just we're short on manpower, so we don't really get going right away. Plus, I also like to let some of the volunteer wheat germinate and let any weeds that are in the field kind of get more foliage going again so that we can go back in with a roundup and burn those weeds down. Our major weed issue around here is sow thistle. So this is just one more chance at giving it a good kick and keeping it down. So yeah, we'll go in, we'll spray usually 7 to 10 days after harvest, let it sit for 3 days, and then we'll go and start our seeding.
Okay. This is a Winning with No-Till series, but many of the guys that we've chatted with at these sessions have tillage someplace in the operation. And I just want to talk about it from the standpoint of Burnham Farms. You know, what tillage happens here on the farm and why is tillage still required sometimes?
Yeah, so I was out disking 2 days ago, um, to fill in some ruts that I made in the wheat field when I was spraying, or well, yeah, I guess one pass was spraying, the other pass was putting uh, the nitrogen down with the sprayer. It was just soft ground and it had to go on. Like I was already pushing the timing and it had to go on. The ground is soft, so you made some ruts even though we have the CTIS on the sprayer.
And which set of tires did you have on when that happened?
The
Thins?
skinnies.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we made a few ruts, so I had to go out and fill them in, and that's the majority of our tillage. Although we on some of our untiled ground, I am starting to go in with a chisel plow. I haven't. I've just started this practice, and it's more or less just to go in and try and break up some of that existing compaction, um, and sort of give that field a bit of a refresh. Try and get some more water infiltration instead of just ponding.
When you find that you make these ruts with the sprayer, considering that the ground is very seldomly unconsolidated, right? It's mostly no-till. When you say ruts, they're not the ruts that your neighbor would see if they were doing the same thing in their field at the same time, are they?
Uh, the ruts this year were deep.
They were. It was just so wet.
Yeah,
Okay.
but out of all my 400 plus acres of wheat, it was like I don't know if I tilled up a total of an acre and a half.
Okay.
So it was pretty minimal.
Very good. So you have that equipment here. You don't use it very often. You still have to keep it in the shop through the winter time to check it over and stuff, or it gets so little use that it really doesn't have a lot of wear and tear.
So yeah, our mindset on that has also changed a little bit. We were kind of we don't use tillage equipment that often, so why spend the money on it? But I've gotten to the point where I'm like, if I'm going to in the field and I'm doing tillage, I want to make sure that tillage equipment is tuned up right. It is doing the best job it can possibly do, and make sure it's the right tillage equipment too. Um,
So you don't have to do it again.
so yeah, I don't have to do it again. Like our chisel plow, um, in this picture here has harrows on it. So it's got tine harrows plus baskets so that we're trying to reduce at least one pass across the field.
Okay, so when it comes to no-till, people talk about the type of equipment that's required for that. So what implements are really the essential pieces of your no-till system?
Drain tile.
Okay, well, I understood. Yeah.
I would say drain tile is probably the number one. After that, yeah, it's your planter and your drill are the two key factors. Planters, I don't think you have to modify all that much from your traditional planters to make them into no-till. Your drills are probably a little more specific, um, but I would say nowadays the majority of the drills are sold as no-till drills anyways. So,
And this picture that we're looking at is your corn and bean planter
mhm.
planting green. So talk to us so you've got another step beyond no-till. Talk to us about the green planting system.
Yeah, so green planting came up from those no-till conferences, and it just I don't know. I guess it was just a progression on the cover crops. And it wasn't really seen as a potential issue when planting. Like my dad and I both conceptually like, yeah, this should work. There's no reason we can't make it work. And like the only real issue we have found, I guess there's a couple. um, the main issue mechanically is closing your seed furrow.
Okay.
So as long as you have a good closing system and enough downforce, uh, it shouldn't be an issue
So do you
getting the
seed a
seed in
little
the ground.
deeper then because of that sort of thatch of living roots?
I suppose if someone tends to maybe seed on the shallower side to begin with, that's maybe a good theory. Um, I tend to err on the slightly deeper side, like I'm probably a 2 to 2.5 inch guy. Um, Issues we've had with planting green are if you have a cereal crop that's maybe too advanced or too thick, um, it can rob a lot of nitrogen from that early corn. And that's one reason we've gone away from cereal rye,
Okay.
is to try and reduce that thick mass in the spring. Um,
And then what do you do in terms of termination?
we are we just go in after post plant pre-emerge with Roundup and Acuron. So just your standard herbicide program, nothing special.
And the combine, how important is that? I guess what I'm getting at
Hmm.
is residue management
Yep.
off of the fields.
Yeah, very important. Um, it's a bit of a challenge in our program because we are edible beans. We don't have that much residue coming out the back. So trying to get it to spread full width when we're running a 40-foot header already uh, is a bit of a challenge. I've made some modifications and I'm hoping this year I should be that much better. But again, it's with the edible beans, it's not a super thick residue either. So if it doesn't get perfect spread, it's probably not as bad as if you're in a 60 bushel, 70 bushel soybeans and you're only spreading 75% of your width.
And with wheat, do you take straw off or do you spread it?
In our area, we don't have a whole lot of market for the straw, so typically we chop. We may only windrow 50 acres, which is enough for our strawberries, and then we've got a local dairy farmer who takes 25 to 30 acres of straw a year, and
It's much easier to plant that cover crop into that standing straw stubble
yeah,
than if it's all plowed over and
absolutely,
the chaff.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm cutting anywhere from 6 to sometimes 12 inches high.
Okay. So you made mention of this a little bit earlier in our conversation, Mark, in terms of the piece of equipment that you buy for using a no-till. Is it the same piece that you would buy if you're doing conventional?
If it was me buying, probably. um, but yeah, there are things to consider if you are no-till for sure, or considering doing some no-till. Um, like there are still lots of no-till drills out there. Um, that's maybe a bit of a tough question for me because yeah, I've been no-till so long. I don't consider non-no-till
Right.
equipment.
And you, like your drill would seed all your wheat and all your cover crops.
Hmm.
And so like that's more wear and tear on it. But, talk about why you drill as opposed to just broadcast.
Right. I guess I forgot to mention that this point previously is um, a good reason why we drill the cover crops is we're also banding fertilizer at the same time. Um, we're trying to accomplish two things at the same pass. So yeah, we're drilling our cover crops on 15 inches and then we're banding our fertilizer on 15 inches.
And that fertilizer is for what?
Well, it's for the following crop, but yeah, it's P and K mostly. But yeah, it's just because we can't get all of it down with the planter. So this is just another way to get it in the soil, down where the roots can access it quicker, and you're not spreading it on the surface where you have the potential to get stratification.
So again, we talked a little bit about the key components of the system in terms of the equipment side of the equation, but what are the other things that you had to sort of adjust? And maybe you haven't, maybe it was your dad that had to do it earlier on, but things like the timing, the patience, the weed control, is that a different ball game than what your conventional tilling neighbors would be engaged in?
Yeah, our maintenance and our setup, you probably have to be a little more finicky. If your planter's not set up perfectly, you'll probably see that a little quicker than you would with a conventional till planter. Same with the combine. If your chopper's not set up properly, you will notice that. Um, and then, yeah, crop rotation. We do try and stick to our rotation as best we can because it does seem to work better if it's in that full 3-year cycle versus just flipping and back and forth or just one crop continuously.
Do you struggle with weed control in a different way than the conventional people around the neighborhood would?
I don't have experience with that because I have very limited full tillage, but yeah, I've been told by good friends that yes, you do have different uh, weed spectrums from no-till to full tillage.
And again, you've been in it long enough that maybe these were all overcome by your dad back in the day. But, a lot of people talk about the hurdles of getting into no-till. So are there any hurdles in your system that you've had to deal with? Because a lot of people are concerned about going into no-till because of things like fertility management, stratification, delayed planting, slow emergence, soil compaction. Are these things that keep you up at night?
Yeah. I'm still dealing with fertilizer management um, to some degree. Like I still have modifications and changes I want to make to my system. But yeah, the fertilizer was and is probably my number one focus.
Okay.
Um, just yeah, getting that as much fertility down either in that 2x2 or in that um, zone as I can.
So very little of yours is broadcast, if any.
Yeah, I try and reduce the broadcast to it's like the bare minimum. Like the first pass in nitrogen on the wheat is broadcast dry. The second pass is liquid. What I'm trying to limit it to is just that single pass, and I can kind of do that with my cover crop and drill pass. But occasionally you get stuck and you say, "Well, I don't have time to do this." You call up the spreader and get it spread. Planting delays and stuff. Yeah, your biggest hurdle there is just learning to be patient. We noticed when we were getting into the no-till corn, more specifically, I noticed when we were getting into no-till corn because I wasn't really around when we transitioned in the other crops.
Mm-hmm.
Our planting dates were almost the same as the full tillage guys because they were doing so many passes. by the time they got around to planting, it was within a day or two of when we would be planting.
Okay.
Soil compaction, it's a consideration. If you can maintain your soil being untouched for so long, you do get that soil structure, and it'll carry your loads a lot better. So soil compaction, I mean, I still consider it. I still try and manage it.
What I found in talking to the no-tillers across the province is that they, like you say, they don't worry about it as much, but they spend the money and the time to make sure that their equipment is in the least compacting way as possible.
Yeah.
And that's always struck me interesting, that those that are least susceptible to compaction are still taking care and concern to address it.
That's true. Like, yeah, we have large tires. Whenever I upgrade a tire, I try and go from a bias to a radial, or if I've already got a radial, go to an IF or a VF. The combine's got tracks. The sprayer's got the CTIS on it,
And two sets of
and
tires.
2 sets of tires. But yeah, I guess that is just part of the system. Is, yeah, you try and you want to avoid making those ruts to avoid going back in and doing the correction, which then sets that part back. And
Okay.
and now that we're to the size where we can do GPS and we're in a near controlled traffic situation, yeah, if you've got those paths, you really don't want to rut them up, because those should be your paths forever. So
Again, trying to do these sessions to give people some different viewpoints from a bunch of different no-till farmers on how they've been successful with their system. Is there anywhere that you feel you're losing by being a no-tiller?
I won't say no, but I will say I don't have the opportunity to justify big flashy equipment to run big flashy tillage equipment because I'm not putting the hours on. That's about it.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably,
Yeah.
like, there is no major drawback. Like, our yields, I think, are comparable, if not better. Our crops, you have wetter crops written down. I don't think that's an issue. Weed control, I think it's, as long as you're on top of you're aware of what herbicides you spray and what weeds are present. It's just different. So yeah, I think the biggest thing is you're not spending as much money on iron, and it's harder to justify buying a $500,000 tractor if it's only going to put on 200 hours a year planting.
So what is the tractor fleet here at Burnham Farms?
It's old.
But in terms of numbers?
We basically have 3 tractors. We've got the big articulate that runs the planter and the drill. We've got an 8,000 Deere, which can run the drill. It does the side dressing and does any little bit of tillage that we have. And then we have a 6R tractor that's basically a utility tractor.
And is that for the grain side, or does that work in the hort side as well?
That's all grain side.
Okay.
The hort side has a whole different fleet of small,
Understood.
numerous machines.
That have to be maintained here in this shop?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so then if that's the case, where are the wins that keep you in no-till?
Yeah, reduce labor. One of my least favorite things on the farm is managing people. If I was to go back to tillage, I mean, it would be into strip till, but if I was to go back into full tillage, I would have to spend more money on equipment. I would have to hire more people and manage those people. The second biggest win is we aren't getting the erosion. We aren't losing our soil. I mean, you only have so many inches of soil, and that's the soil that erodes is your high fertility soil. I mean, you look at what you spend per acre on buying new ground, and if it's eroding, whether by wind or water, that's expensive. And then you look at the fertility that's leaving with it. It's crazy. And that's how I justify the cover crops, is basically soil loss alone is paying for every single pound of cover crops I plant.
And would you ever have a change of heart and find yourself back with more aggressive tillage equipment?
It would probably have to be on a different scale, farming on a different scale, whether it be larger or smaller, and probably changing what topography I do farm. Because yeah, you go back to full tillage or conventional tillage, whatever you want to call it, on some of our slopes, no matter if you're tilling 1.5 inches deep with a high-speed disc or you're chisel plowing, you're pulling up rocks and it's going to erode. Whether it be wind or water, it's going to erode. And so in this area, I don't think I would ever, it would be it'd have to be a very lucrative opportunity for me to go back to that situation.
Like, are you where you want to be? Is there any next steps that you're thinking about?
Part of my personality, I just kind of always look for that next level of efficiency. So yeah, I am looking at upgrading some equipment to try and get more towards that controlled traffic or reduce compaction. And so yeah, right now we're investigating going to a different planter setup to reduce the compaction after we plant the seeds, like get rid of the cart dragging behind and try and go to a more mounted system. It's just, which is also makes it easier to handle in our hills and whatever. So
okay. So we're winding up now, and so part of this series is to give people different views of how people have got into the system and their comfort level and the things that they do. What would be your advice to people who are thinking about moving into a more comprehensive no-till system?
Yeah, make sure you do your homework. Make sure you understand what is required for the entire system, whether it be mechanically or other. Yeah, tile drain is massive. Fertility, in my opinion, is massive.
Ahead of when you would start no-till, get your levels up. Is that what you're thinking? Or manage within moving to that news?
Yeah, I mean, if you have to do tillage, maybe throw fertility in there while you're doing it. I don't know. It's again tough for me to, if I've made the decision to go to no-till, I'm like, boy, am I going to do one more year of big tillage just to mix in the fertility? Maybe that's not the number one solution. But if I have to, if I have to do corrective tillage, like if we've done tile drainage and we need to go back in and do another pass leveling, yeah, go out and throw a bunch of fertility on to help fix it, but also figure out your fertility program and how you're going to apply it. Like do your removal rates plus a little bit. Make sure your equipment can get that in the ground in the way that you want to, or if you're comfortable broadcasting, that's fine too. Yeah, those are probably, yeah. Your notes here have levelness and smoothness down, which, yeah, we've taken note is when you do tillage, make sure you do a good job, because you don't want to go back in again and fix it again.
Fix the tillage.
Yeah. So try and fix it, get it fixed. If that requires several passes, yeah. Like I'm not super strict in my ways. I understand you have to be flexible, you have to be able to do this and that. But yeah, if you do something, try and do it right.
Agreed. Very good. So Mark, on behalf of those that will take in this session as part of the Winning with No-Till series at Crop Chats, thank you very much for letting me sort of hang around with you the last 2 or 3 summers to get a real good feel for your operation and be able to help put this session together. And I've really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for sharing. Are you open to letting people get in touch with you if they've got questions or want to engage in a conversation?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So on behalf of Burnham Farms here in Cobourg, thanks very much for listening to this session, and feel free to give Mark a call or email if you've got questions for him. Thanks very much.
Thank you.